Welcome to Sketchbook Legends. I'm your artist, Paul Hostetler, and today we're drawing Marvel Comics flagship Silver Age superhero, Spider-Man. Now this one's going to be a little bit hard for me. I don't have a lot of strong feelings about Spider-Man. I don't have a lot of hot takes about Spider-Man. There's really not a lot to say about most superheroes, just because they were almost all exclusively created for the consumption of children and young people, and therefore have fairly simple personalities and problems. The sort of universal stuff that comes when you're bitten by a radioactive spider and get danger precognition senses. Spider-Man debuted in August 1962 in issue 15 of Amazing Fantasy, which was a magazine that specialized in monster comics. A monster would arrive, terrorize a village or something, and then a scientist would come and figure out how to banish it. But issue 15 was the last issue of this comic, and they had Spider-Man. I guess Spider-Man being the monster, which, you know, if you've got a good sense of humor, and I'm supposing that the folks over at Marvel, or Atlas, as it may have been called, probably did. Writing of the Spider-Man story was, as usual, credited to Stan Lee. But who knows how much he was actually involved in the plotting, since he was editing like 15 different books at the time. And the Marvel method of comics making meant that a lot of the creative decisions went to the artists. In this case, Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. Jack Kirby was originally slated to be the artist on Spider-Man, but he was also drawing like 4 other comic books at the time. I don't know how much you know about drawing comic books, but you're lucky to get 1 page done a day, and if you are completing 4 complete monthly comics on schedule, on time, that's the kind of output that most people cannot afford without going nuts. Jack Kirby is the one who sort of made up the Spider-Man costume, but it was decided that not only was his version of Spider-Man, which you can see on the cover of Amazing Fantasy 15, just a little too heroic and muscular, but Steve Ditko, who happened to be available, drew him a little bit scrawnier, a little bit more awkward, a little bit more creepy, which suited the character more. He's supposed to be a little bit of an anti-hero, reviled by the mainstream media and the public. So, where did Spider-Man come from? Well, Jack Kirby talked about wanting to develop a character called the Silver Spider. He wanted to take that in a different direction, maybe make a spin-off character, a spin-off spider-themed character. Stan Lee says it came to him whole cloth from watching a bug crawl up the wall while he was in bed. There was already an Archie Comics hero called The Fly, which was created by Kirby and Joe Simon. These are the 2 guys who also invented Captain America. And The Fly had a bunch of the same superpowers as Spider-Man. He could stick to walls and stuff. Spider-Man's costume, you know, it also had historical antecedents. There was a line of Spider-Man Halloween costumes in the 50s. If you remember, back in those days, they basically cut some holes out of a plastic bag and printed a design on the front. And you were lucky if you got holes to breathe out of for the mask, which was just another plastic bag. The Spider-Man Halloween costume in the 50s was yellow, and it had spider webs printed all over it and little spiders scurrying all around that. It was, I guess, just a generic spooky thing. But it looks shockingly similar to the design of the Spider-Man Marvel Comics costume. And in fact, the costume company had some legal entanglements with Marvel over that fact. And eventually Marvel just officially licensed Spider-Man back over to them to make the first official Spider-Man costumes that kids could wear. There was a 1938 movie serial called The Spider, which has no relation whatsoever to Spider-Man. I'm just bringing it up because while I was doing research, it kept coming up. There were a whole bunch of spider-themed pulp heroes and villains whose costumes might also have played a role in inspiring the Spider-Man look. But with this new show they've got, Spider Noir, in which there's a version of Spider-Man played by Nick Cage, it's almost impossible to Google any of the phrases you'd look for. Pulp hero Spider-Man doesn't work. Spider-Man costume origin doesn't work. Costume inspiration doesn't work. All of these just take you to Halloween costumes and to Spider-Man Noir and to people who are doing similar video essays about Spider-Man's costume after he existed, not before, which doesn't help me at all. Let's focus on the art for a few minutes. The pose is always fun with Spider-Man. Spider-Man's supposed to be a very acrobatic character, flexible and agile, and that's what sets him apart from the Supermans and the Thors and Captain Americas. So you always get to put him in interesting poses with his legs and arms all akimbo. And the key to doing a good Spider-Man pose, I feel, is to make it look like he's in motion. People, when they're in midair, usually they're not at their most graceful. They look kind of awkward and floppy. But not Spider-Man. Spider-Man's supposed to be able to control his movements in such a way that he pretty much always looks cool when he's swinging around the city. You can see me working with the anatomy here. Anatomy is tricky. It's tricky for pretty much every artist, all the time, always. If you do enough of it, you sort of internalize where muscles and bones and fat deposits are on the body, and it makes it a little easier. But when you have a character in movement, all of their muscles are moving too. And sometimes, these muscles are layered. You have to understand which muscles move first, which muscles move underneath. I feel I've got a pretty good sense of anatomy, but there's a reason I'm not drawing Spider-Man from the back. Backs are very hard. Not only because you don't draw them when you're doing narratives, you don't draw back muscles quite as much. You want to see the character's face, you want to see them act. But also because the back is covered with all of this weave of muscles that shift and change shape and become prominent and flatten depending not only on the movement of either arm or the head, but also where the light is, different things pop when you're shrugging versus when you're slouching. So I like to cover up my anatomical inadequacies by reminding everybody that Spider-Man is not actually nude. You're not actually seeing his muscles. He's wearing a full-body suit made of fabric. And the fabric, being stretchy, is going to hide some of that anatomy. And so I, as the artist, can worry more about the folds in spandex than capturing every single muscle correctly. It's been pointed out, and I've heard it said on podcasts, that the sort of hunching over posture that Spider-Man does a lot, it's very, very hard to look cool and fit while you're doing that. I mean, you've got all your organs inside your body, and that sort of just smooshes your stomach out when you hunch over. But fortunately, being a superhero, Spider-Man is in incredible shape. So he just looks awesome even when he's crouched over, which he is quite a lot of the time. It's one of his standard poses. Another one of Spider-Man's typical thingies that he does is he shoots webs from little web shooters on his wrist. In some versions, he's got a little machine, a doohickey strapped to his wrist like a watch, and he shoots the webs out of that, meaning, you know, he can run out, and that adds a little, I feel, necessary tension. The webs are fun to draw, but like everything with Spider-Man, they are also a pain in the keister to draw. Usually it's a lot of very long lines, but then they've got these twirly bits around them, and depending on what kind of artist you are, you either want to give those twirly bits some body so that they look three-dimensional, or you're just scribbling so you can get on to the next panel and have fun drawing all the skyscrapers in the background. It doesn't take that long to explain. I built some web devices. In the comics, he does this when he's a teenager in his bedroom. And it's treated as just something any smart, engineering-focused teenager could have done. But why would anyone except the one teenager who's Spider-Man? Because building a web shooter in your room is a sure way to break your neck. A normal teenager can't use a web swinger for really anything, any purpose whatsoever. The only one for whom a web shooting device is at all useful is Spider-Man. And, you know, I'm sure that law enforcement would love a projectile weapon that is super strong and can incapacitate suspected criminals with minimal effort or injury. But Spider-Man didn't think of that, and every writer who's ever worked on Spider-Man has either not thought of that or decided that Spider-Man selling web slingers to cops wasn't the direction that they wanted to go in. So that just may be why that has never happened. You see me just doing basic male athletic stuff. I still haven't decided which version of Spider-Man I'm going to be drawing, because there are a bunch of different Spider-Mans now. There's the Peter Parker Spider-Man, there's the Ben Reilly Spider-Man, there's Miles Morales Spider-Man. All of these guys have different costumes. Some are easier to draw than others, but mostly they start with a base of, full body covering on a skinny athletic build. Now, what makes Spider-Man popular? I mean, he is the Marvel Universe's main character. He's Marvel's flagship character. I think he's got the most merchandise of any Marvel superhero. He's got the second highest number of toys. I know, number one is Batman. And I think that's just because Batman has a whole bunch of gadgets. You can package like one Batman with a different color suit and a different gadget. That's like 8 Batman toys. But Spider-Man is number 2. Or at least he was when I was in college. I'm betting that Iron Man has hopped up pretty high in the ratings with all the movies, all the different suits. But Batman's been around for longer, so I'm willing to bet the Batman is still number 1 in terms of number of toys sold. But Spider-Man, is right next to Batman in terms of popularity. Batman's with DC Comics. So it's a different sort of competition. I mean, in terms of why people like him, it's not like people really love spiders. I think there's a combination of factors that goes into Spider-Man's popularity. The first one is the costume. This here's a full body costume. You don't need to know how to draw faces or people in order to draw Spider-Man. He's got the big sort of chunky glasses from a 50s housewife style eyes. His design is iconic despite being a chore to draw, but kids have pretty much unlimited free time, so if someone wants to draw Spider-Man, they can do a pretty decent Spider-Man without ever having to learn how to draw a face. So yeah, 1, costume. 2, Spider-Man is poor and sad. In the comics, Peter Parker grows up in Queens, moves to the city. He gets a job as a photographer. Sometimes he's a public school teacher, sometimes he's a scientist. The point is, he has trouble making rent. And he also has a lot of, turmoil in his love life. I think the character works best those times when he's just a little bit miserable. I mean, however much danger you throw at a superhero, them succeeding against the odds is always sort of guaranteed, and it's always going to look cool. Everyone wants to have superpowers and to go on adventures. It doesn't take a lot to make that feel exciting, but having Spider-Man be poor and sad and kind of hapless the rest of the time is just enough complexity to make him kind of endlessly interesting to the part of anyone's brain that never stops being 5 years old. Clark Kent has a similar thing going on, in which half the time he's Superman, handsome and beloved. Half the time he's Clark Kent, kind of a doof. But at least Clark Kent has a steady job and looks good in a suit and gets to have this cute little ongoing flirtation with his co-workers. Spider-Man's got even less than that. He's a doof, and as Spider-Man, he's not exactly beloved, and his personal life and his finances are both a mess. There's just a lot more drama you can wring from that than you can from handsome but bespectacled Clark Kent. And third, Spider-Man is funny. He tells jokes while he's beating up criminals, and everybody likes a funny guy. Why no one else ever thought of costume plus miserable plus funny in the same character before is anyone's guess. I guess sometimes the power fantasy aspect of superheroes is just such an incredible urge that it overwhelms the necessity to kind of cut the hero down to size a little bit just to make them feel more human. Alright, we're drawing the black in Spider-Man's costume now, or it should be black. If you watch the movies these days, he's got a red and blue costume. Same as in the comics, Originally, he was supposed to have a red and black costume. But it's hard to... You can't do a solid black on the comic page, because if you notice things like the overlapping of the limbs on his leg, you need an edge to that, and a little bright spot in which you can put color to show that, you know, here's where one part of him ends, here's where another part of him begins. What color do you put in that non-black area? They went with blue, and that sort of skewed the color of the costume from being black to blue. You notice the sort of black-blue thing again with Clark Kent's hair. Clark Kent has black hair, but the shiny part of his hair is blue. When it's hair, it reads as black. When it's a costume, it reads, doing the exact same thing with the costume, reads as blue. Sometimes as an artist, life isn't fair like that. I think there's been one movie, one of the Disney released Spider-Man movies, where he has a black costume. That didn't last too long. I think they were just trying to sell another action figure. But as you can tell, I've decided to go with the Peter Parker Spider-Man, which means that I'm gonna be drawing a heck of a lot of webs all over this guy. I wasn't too pleased about that, but the Ben Reilly Spider-Man has a red costume, but he also has a sleeveless hoodie on also, because he was invented in the 90s. And I just hadn't drawn that on this guy, so I couldn't really justify erasing a full half of my figure to put a sleeveless hoodie on him, especially since the Ben Reilly Spider-Man is not my favorite. More recently, there's been the Miles Morales Spider-Man. He's, I think, a half black, half Dominican teenager who gets spider powers. He's become very popular with the Spider-Verse animated movies. But his costume is black with red webs. And as hard as all these webs are to draw, drawing them in negative would have been so much harder. I mean, I know I have a whiteout pen, but that's not the most accurate tool. And just drawing the little squares in between every strand of spider web, filling those in with black, didn't seem like a productive use of my time, given that, again, nobody's paying me to do this. I'm doing this of my own free will for my own purposes. Maybe if you, the audience, request Miles Morales or Ben Reilly, I'll take them up. But in the howling void that greets every video I put out, I get to choose what I draw. Kind of looks like he's wearing a big sock. There's been some debate over the years. Does Spider-Man wear shoes? Or is his costume just like socks on bare feet? It seems nuts since, he gets thrown around in these superhero battles, knocked through walls and smashed into cars and stuff, that he's only wearing like a spandex bodysuit he got from like a dance studio or something, I'm not sure. In the comic, he silk screens all of this stuff himself. And I'm a little bit upset that, none of the movie versions have adhered to that. All of his movie costumes look very much like they were produced by a special effects house, instead of a broke teenager / college student, which I feel, again, undercuts the drama inherent in Spider-Man. Now, the Spider-Man comics have been in print pretty much constantly since 1963. After Amazing Fantasy, that was in August of 1962. Allegedly, they got the sales figures back and decided to give Spider-Man his own book. I call bunk on that. 1960s, the calculations for sales were not all that great or quick. Were not all that quick. I don't think they would have been able to suss out that Spider-Man was as popular as he was solely from sales numbers and reader response in time to have a #1 comic ready to hit in March of 1963. I'm betting they knew that Spider-Man was going to be a hit, and that they commissioned The Amazing Spider-Man #1 months in advance. But as the readers of the day would have liked to have thought that they had some control over these sort of editorial decisions, Stan Lee was always happy to oblige them in that fantasy. In fact, Spider-Man's so popular that, even before the 60s were over, he already had a cartoon show on CBS, I think. He's had multiple cartoon shows since then. Each one has a different name: Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Ultimate Spider-Man, Spider-Man and Pals. I don't know. I stopped watching all of these 30 years ago. So many webs. He's had, I think, a live action show that didn't last too long because You know, there's only so much you can do with special effects before computers came around to make Spider-Man look cool. He's had a Japanese live-action tokusatsu show in which Spider-Man also has a giant robot. He's had 9 live-action movies from the Sony Corporation. The first 3 had starred Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker. The middle 2 starred Andrew Garfield, and they were, I don't want to say universally, but they didn't look too good from here. And then Disney has put out 3 Spider-Man movies, and there's a new one coming up later this year, starring Tom Holland. And Spider-Man's been in a bunch of other, like Avengers and Captain Americas and stuff. There's been a whole bunch of side character spin-offs. They've made a Morbius movie. Morbius is one of Spider-Man's villains. They made a Madam Web movie. Madam Web is one of Spider-Man's allies. There have been countless corporate tie-in merchandise products, like I said, second only to Batman. And I counted over 40 video games, with a number of appearances as a playable character in completely unrelated video games, like Marvel vs. Capcom, Lego Superheroes, and Fortnite. Let's see what I'm doing here. I've chosen to give Spider-Man some mechanical web shooters, and it looks like he's forgotten to refill his web fluid package, and he's stuck in mid-air without any web, so he's going to utter a very unmarvel "oh shit," just to proclaim his displeasure at being stuck in between 2 skyscrapers in the middle of Manhattan, dozens of feet above the ground, with no way to catch himself. This is the sort of situation in which Spider-Man has never found himself before in the comics, because it would undoubtedly lead directly to his death. There's nothing that Spider-Man can do at this point when he doesn't have his webs. He's just going to fall and break all of his bones and sort of turn into a jelly. R.I.P. That's how I'd kill him anyway. And that's Spider-Man. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You know where to find those buttons. Can also find links to my online store, my tip jar, and my Patreon in the description of this video. If you want to suggest a future sketch, leave a comment below. As always, stay sketching, stay legendary, and have a nice day.